I'll dive straight in. I could almost speak singularly to this slide, which is, in my view, absolutely stunning, of the old Filton Airport just to the north of the great West Region industrious city of Bristol, as Jeremy mentioned in his kind introduction. For many, many years, Bristol is, I think, the only major city in the UK that has struggled to develop and find itself a site and an opportunity to create a kind of an amphitheatre, a civic arena for itself. We, at Grimshaw, I arrived at Grimshaw in 1995, and shortly after that arrival, there was a lovely design competition that we were shortlisted, but Bainish won the scheme for an arena on the canal side in Bristol. That never happened. There was a further competition in Bristol for an arena close to Temple Meads that Populous won. We came a close and disappointing second to that, but again, that never happened. And at about the same time as that, our friends at YTL, who are a kind of Malaysian developer, bought the former Filton Airfield site to the north of Bristol, and were, they had this kind of ambition to develop out that as a pretty dense, very appropriately dense mixed-use development, and that is ongoing and looking pretty good, I've got to say. Alongside that, the runway, and I'll speak a bit about the history of these buildings. Alongside the runway, which really is the site of that development, they acquired what was called the Brabazon Hangars, and I think YTL originally thought, well, we'll have that. It's come pretty cheap to us because it's in a pretty forlorn state, and the value of the steel within it is actually worth more than the cost of purchasing it. So I think their original intent was to pick this up and knock it over. It wasn't listed, but when you start to consider the history of this building, it was built in 1948-49, post Second World War. This amazing aeroplane, which was going to be a kind of high comfort, high luxury transatlantic airliner, extraordinary wingspan. This thing was built. They prototyped a single flight, I think, and then the jet engine came in and made it immediately redundant. We've kind of uncovered lovely little drawings of how might we go about building a hangar for this thing. They ended up though with these remarkable 3-span hangars, each of them 80-meter clear span in width, and the central one 120 meters long. The other ones are 80 meters long. And as I said, YTL thought to buy these and knock them over and just continue with their redevelopment of the site. I think to our immense relief, and we're in a good position at Grimshaw because we're sitting pretty on this project, but also I think for Bristol it's a great, hopefully a future success story, because the guy that started YTL, who sadly died a few years ago, he fell in love with the West Country and the city, and he basically said, I want to give the city an arena, privately funded, and that's left YTL and the legacy of YTL with a real, I suppose, responsibility. So I think the arena is coming. We were asked to come in and sort of look at this space and to work out how would we use it, and could in fact a major arena fit within that. Now, this is impossible to kind of communicate through photographs, but you walk through these wonderful Avasian doors, these great kind of bifolding doors on the south side of that central hangar, and this is my team walking in, not for the first time. We've gone in many, many times, and you're hit by this wonderful clear span space, as I said, built in 1948 and engineered by aviation engineers. So this thing, when you look at it, it sort of feels like it defies gravity. There's a lot less steel in this than I think you would traditionally get if it was done by conventional structural engineers, because they're looking to strip weight and tonnage of steel out, at that very, very first moment. We've calculated that if having saved this, if this thing was otherwise kind of demolished, what we would have done is recycle 4,000 tons of steel. There would have been 20,000 meters cubed of concrete that would have been dug up and needed to be transferred off-site, 30,000 meters cubed of fill that would have needed to be dug up and transferred off-site. And we think that about 16 million kilograms of carbon capture is formed by the reuse of this building. So if we can hang on to it, that's a great outcome for us. As I said, if you want to defy kind of gravity, walking amongst this amazing kind of intricate truss structure is an experience to behold. And I suppose, being fascinated with the kind of way things are constructed as a practice, this is almost to us the kind of the perfect project. So our first exploration, I suppose, was to say, could we fit a major arena in that central hangar? And we've proved that we can. It works extremely well. It's a little bit tight on the top tier, but that's no bad thing, I think. But the kind of diagram of the arena and this kind of tripartite use of those three hangars, is almost the kind of the architect's dream, where you have this interstitial space between each of the hangars, where you can plug in the back of house, some of the front of house. You can service each of these great spaces from that interstitial zone, and then almost thrust that into that kind of that southern forecourt, and provide all of the plant and equipment that is needed to drive some of that air handling, in particular, into these large volumes. At the moment, we're looking at different uses for the east and the west hangars, but they're predominantly flat floor and will benefit from the full expression and the full reveal of the structure. The central hangar needs to work, of course, acoustically, and the depth of that central truss works for us wonderfully in terms of the kind of diaphragm model of acoustics, where we can have a taut lower skin, an acoustic top skin, and not need to deal with heavyweight introduction of a heavyweight slab. In the other direction, we've got this another constraint, which is a redundant or a very unused railway line immediately to the north of the project. So I suppose there's another great thing about the project, which Bristol City Council have said, well, if you want an arena, you're going to have to revive the railway as well. So YTL have said, well, that's absolutely fine. We'll put a station in there and connect it back to Bristol Temple Meads, which again will be a great thing in terms of public transport. But what that railway line has done is it's forced the kind of approach to the arena some 8 meters up into the air, which means that your approach into the hangars is up in the sky, which gives us the opportunity of this idea of a piano nobile, and then a great sort of lower tier. Conventional arenas tend to kind of keep that lowest concourse quite close to the ground and therefore have a smaller lower tier. We're going for a kind of a big lower tier, big kind of amphitheater model, and a much smaller upper tier, and then that kind of connection transversely into the other hangars. So it's kind of working a little bit against the conventional in terms of arena convention. But you get this idea that you're going to have a big flat floor, a big lower tier, and then up in the gods, you're going to have a very different, more passive, I suppose, relationship to the performance. But knowing that immediately behind you, you can turn around and access concourses that look east and west into the two different hangars either side. There's a lot of things that I could say about the adaptive reuse. I could speak to this forever, I think, in terms of the planning. The key thing here, I suppose, is our philosophical approach to this is to say, if we're going to insert the arena, let's make sure we could pull it out again, in the future. So in many ways, the architecture is one of clip-on, plug-in, the fire escapes plug-in from the outside, the servicing towers plug-in from the outside. And then we're doing our damnedest to make sure that we don't in any way compromise the integrity of the structural steel and that everything really works around that and is clipped in, bolted in, or freestanding from it. There's a great series of stories on the outside of the building. I'm not going to go into that, but Again, we're really keeping the existing landform. Immediately adjacent to the railway line, there's quite a depression, so we're going to use that for suds and recycling and harvesting of rainwater, and then use the hard stand areas immediately proximate to the great hangars for external space. And again, as I said, we're just about to move into RIBA stage 4. This will be a heavy responsibility, but I can't wait. And the client again is, I think, breaking the conventional and really wanting to bring in those specialist contractors very, very early into the game, and giving us really strong access into the people that will work to adjust the existing structural steel and to plug in new structural elements, so that we're kind of designing with the specialists. Similarly with the facade engineering, where I'm quite sure we'll develop specific componentry for this because of the acoustic demands of the space. And then we'll work very hard in particular, the mechanical plant required for the project. And that will obviously lead to this plug-in, the old kind of almost like a kind of high-tech, but modernized high-tech adaptive reuse plug-in, plug-out element. Great, looking for great legibility, I suppose, in terms of the architecture, knowing that if there is legibility, that works as a venue, but it also works, I think, in terms of a very kind of conscious mindset. We can turn back and have great fun with, I think, some of that aviation technology and some of the aviation aesthetic. And of course, we can work closely with those specialist contractors as we move into stage 4. And we'll end up, again, I think it's very hard at this stage to kind of reveal that architecture, but everyone sitting here, I'm sure, gets a very good idea that, we can kind of hang these wonderful bars and things from that existing structure and look west and east, look into the arena, but also look west into some of these great flat floor venues that can be used for exhibition, film studio, and other entertainment hubs. Thank you.